guessing you've never been here before, or at least you don't think you have. But I'm at the church. This is the boiler room of the church, and as you can see, it's kind of a little bit messy. Maybe not unlike how many of you feel like the world around us is going at everything right now. It's a little messy because nobody's been here before. We don't know what to do when we've never been here before. So we try to make plans and do things to deal with what we've never seen before. Now, I want to take you just on a quick little journey in Genesis chapter 12, where Abram and his wife Sarah have never been there before. And just because they've never been there before doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad or anything like that. But we see him making plans out of a fear instead of out of faith. And that's one of the things that we want to make sure that we're not doing in the midst of all of this tragedy. So if you want to look with me, I'm in Genesis chapter 12, and what's happened here is that it says in verse 10, at this time a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram, who becomes Abraham, to go down to Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. I don't think it's a big stretch for us to think about the fact that we live in foreign times in the last few days. I mean, this is everybody I've talked to, people that have been around and lived many, many years on this earth, have said they've never seen anything like this before. It's very foreign times, and it's probably not unlike a time of famine that they're doing. And basically what happened here is it forced them to go into Egypt and to live as foreigners. They needed to find a new normal. And what ended up happening in the midst of this is, instead of Abram trusting God, he made his own plan. Pick up in verse 11, it says, as he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sarah, look, you are a beautiful woman. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her. So please tell them you're my sister. And then they will spare my life and treat me well because of your interest, or because of their interest in you. And you know what? He was right. They did notice that she was beautiful. And they did pay attention to her and to him because of that. In fact, Pharaoh found out about it and showered Abram with gifts and took Sarah, Abram's sister, into his house. But then God, it says, brought a bunch of plagues onto Egypt, and Pharaoh realized that this was because he had brought this woman that was actually married to Abram, his wife, into his house. So Pharaoh sent them away out of the land that they went into to try to survive in the famine. Now, what we find out next in the story is that Abram's traveling with his nephew Lot, and there's just, it was kind of too close for comfort kind of thing. Everybody was getting a little itchy with everybody on top of each other. I'm sure that's not going to happen when we're all closed into our houses with our family. But what they decided was they were going to kind of part ways and go in different directions. And so Abram looked at Lot and he says, you look out, you pick out whichever direction, whichever land you want, and you take your pick. And he didn't need to do this because he was the uncle, he was the elder. And in fact, if he was smart, he would sit there and say, let me pick out what I want first. Let me pick out my best. Let me hoard for myself what I would like to have. But he doesn't do that. What he does is he says to Lot, you pick out what you want. You do. I'm going to trust the Lord this time. And he trusts the Lord to leave him and to provide for him in this. So what we find out then at the end of Genesis chapter 13, starting in verse 14, it says, after Lot had gone his way, the Lord said to Abram, Look as far as you can see in every direction, north and south, east and west. I am giving all this land, as far as you can see, to you and your descendants as a permanent possession. And I will give you so many descendants, like the dust of the earth, they cannot be counted. Go, walk through the land in every direction, for I'm giving it to you. I think this is a great picture because, God doesn't say that he has it right now. And when you look at it, there's a timing in God's hand that we can miss. But what you do see, what you can understand, hopefully in the midst of this, is that God will and can do good when we choose to follow his plan and not make plans of our own out of fear. Well, how do we do that? How do we follow God's plan? Maybe you could sit there and say, well, if God would just write his plan down of, in this kind of a situation when there's a super virus going around, this is what we should do. Well, I think God's plan is simple. He says, walk humbly, do good, live godly lives, no matter what. Do good, even when the world is saying hoard up things for you. Make sure you have enough sheets of toilet paper. God says, look for ways that you can help and share with other people in need. The world says, I'm restricted, I don't have freedom, I can't go freely and do what I want to do. Well, God says, you're not restricted, you're free. You're not free maybe to go and do everything you want, but you're free to live according to God's holy word. The world says this is horrible, this is disastrous. The world says that maybe the world is coming to an end. But God says, look around you. There are so many possibilities, so many opportunities. Maybe you have more time than what you would normally have to connect and to relate with your own family because you're all cooped up together. Maybe you're picking up the phone and calling people that you don't take the time to call because you're running people to soccer practice and music lessons or whatever it is. But there's so many possibilities for us. And if we focus on making plans out of fear instead of how to do good and to show God's love, then we're missing everything he has for us. I think it can be summed up in 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. He says this, humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. When we make plans out of fear, we basically are saying, God, you won't take care of me. You won't meet my needs. But when we cast all our fears and anxieties to him, what we're saying is that, God, I trust that you'll take care of me. I'll do good. I'll act in a way that would represent you in every situation, and I'll trust you in that. I hope this is an encouragement for you in the midst of all of these things that are happening, and even as things are changing and plans are changing every day. And I look forward to meeting you again right here this weekend as we do an online service experience together as we did last weekend. God bless you, praying for you, and hope to connect with you very soon.